Hello everyone, I'm FIDE Master Vladimir Chernikov, and we continue with knight and games, but not knight versus pawn this time. Knight versus knight, typical end games that can happen in your game. If you miss knight versus pawn, I invite you to check my channel and see previous videos there. So, what about this end game? As you see, name of the video also, Botvinnik rule. What does it mean? Botvinnik has two important things that he said about the end games. We'll apply two of them. I'll say it in advance already in the start of the video, and then I'll illustrate you exactly on examples how it works. One, that Botvinnik said that the knight end games are exactly as pawn end games, like the valuation of position. Mostly it's about valuation. Also the principles, etc. Like you can understand who is better if you just remove knights in your head from the board, and you will see who is better. Let's say in this situation, obviously black is better, because if knights are not here, you just throw this pawn, right, deviate white king, while it goes to take the pawn, you grab this one, you grab other pawns, and you promote the queens. Easy game. Here we have knights, obviously it's much more difficult, but variation stays the same. Black might be better, but you will see it's one of my favorite in games, how many important things you need to avoid here to not get caught for both sides. And second, I will say you already in the next position that we'll analyze. So here, this endgame, one of the most interesting. So here, what is the move? Looks like we just can throw the pawn by playing h4. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. Always I suggest you to have few candidates move. One option can be a4, obviously looks good, this move, because we block pawns of opponent. So here, how to play? At first, you need to think always about counterplay of your opponent. What will do white? Because if white will stay passive, you'll just play h4, probably like bring the knight somehow, maneuver it. Not right now, right? Because white has knight f3. Not directly, right? But you'll push pawn, you'll push this pawn, you'll reposition your knight. You'll be just progressing slowly. What white will do? I suggest you to think, so the counterplay, always better to not stay passive in this kind of position. Black knight wants to go somewhere here and attack. Let's say if you will play h4, knight f7, king f6, knight here, king is the one who will be already stopping the pawn, knight will go for your pawns, knight c4, and as you see your pawn just starting to fall. If you go here, he keeps pressuring them, and they just will fall one by one. If h3, we go here, and we just defend. So to avoid the counterplay, first of all, we play knight to f6. So here obviously knight needs to be moved somewhere. If he stays passive, then already it's no counterplay. We do play h4 and we make our position better. Knight h7, very important to play here. King e7, but in game we'll play king g7. They repeat it once, and king e7, only way to play for a win. And here it looks like very not natural move, because you say, why do I bring my king from e5, the central square, to e7, where I'm not doing nothing, and I let white king pass through and activate. So here there comes a trick. King goes to d4 looks like the most obvious move. First of all, and without trick that I will show you right now, we are winning still, because it's pawn and game. We still winning even in this position without king in e5. But what happens after the most natural move in the world, right? King goes to d4. I suggest you to pause the video and to try to find the move. You're right if you say knight f8. Don't forget, even though it's endgame, there is forced and tactical ideas. Knight f8 just transition to the exactly the pawn endgame, already to not some mystery pawn endgames that can happen or not happen. It's exactly the pawn endgame, whatever white plays, like I don't know, wasting temples, we close position, and we just win. We start to throw pawns while king goes for this pawn. We grab here the pawn, we grab another pawn, and we just win the game. So in this case, king d4 will be a mistake, because yes, you don't have to take the knight, but then exactly it's double attack, and black also wins. This is first idea to avoid. Knight g5, let's say white is smart, because king d4 loses immediately. How to play then? First of all, we reposition just a little bit. Knight e5 with threatening things. We don't want to waste temples, because if we don't threat nothing, white will just calmly reposition his pieces. Knight, king d4, king d6. Looks like finally we gave up the center. That is true, because before we were more active. But king in d4 is not really position where he wants to stay. Best thing, as I said, to block the pawn, but you cannot just walk away and go for the pawn, because black will start to take the pawns, and we also have advantage pass pawn here that is advanced. So king d6, knight h3. Obviously, like if before we close it with a4, blocking the weakness very important in chess, and we just might play b5, knight c4 and grab this. So this is not the way. Knight h3. Let's say he just wants to stay passive. a4, blocking pawn structure always, it's very good. And here very important, I know that we need to throw the pawn excuse me, to win the c4 square, right? But why we need to do it so fast? We can also maneuver with king, but that makes sense probably. Here, very important detail, to play firstly b6 and then b5, because white is not moving. If white goes away, he just giving up something in position, because here we just take the pawn. If king c3, we just like can continue with king c5 and then play b5. We want some space, right? So b6, b5 also according to computers still winning, but much more difficult than b6. So let's say we play b6. This is also, these small details matters. b5, knight h3. We want to do it exactly in this position. I'll explain you why. So knight c6 check, king e3, and king c5, right? We can continue. So the problem that if knight was in f4 right now, there was potential checks here, there was potential disturbing our pawns, knight c7 trying to control this pawn, you know. Knight h3 is much more far from the center, and it's much better for us. From here it's already kind of simple, right? We do play b4, a takes, king takes b4, threatening here. I mean, from here just really simple, knight d4 check, king b1. Very important move now, I really like this move a lot. Once again, check previous videos in my channel, part 2 of knight versus pawn Endgame. There were these positions that in one of them we were playing some prophylactic move. Maybe when we can win much straightforward, but knight e6 so beautiful move. In the end you will see why it's very important to play this. In general, just zoning the knight, and we see that we are not in a rush. We still, like, to go for this pawn is obviously a plan, but if we'll go it directly, still we'll probably need to remove the knight somewhere. So we do it now, because we don't really lose the temple. If knight goes away, we just enter with knight f4, knight in. So king a2, king c4, king a3 here. Now we see very important, knight is controlled. As you see, this knight e6 move also was not possible with knight in f4, so how important was to play this b6, b5. And then knight f3. There's no king f3, I mean, no way to escape right now with knight, because once again h3, knight controls the f4 square. How useful was move knight e6. So b5, king g2, b6, he takes h3, b7, and even we have knight c5 in the end. So knight e6, how strong it is. Without it, it's possibly still winning, just like we need to play more passive. Probably we needn't to push it that much, like we can do a lot of prophylaxis, much more, but with knight and e6, it's just very simple, a very simple win. Obviously, he is not forced to push pawn, but what we learned, right, if pawn is already here, it's just easy to block it. We play here. To take the knight, he needs to waste really a lot of temples, but we just simply win here. Be careful to not step like somewhere here, like just as prophylactic idea. But let's say knight goes to d6, and we can just dance around like here, knight b5, winning some temples if you want, right? And just like, you know, we can even win directly, giving up the knight in this position, a7, king, wherever. We promote, and then already it's another part, it's queen Endgame, so I will cover it later, but obviously against g-pawn, it's a winning position for black. So that was another endgame. The key details, first of all, always try to calculate even a little bit, even though it's endgame, it's very important. If you play for initiative, keep playing for initiative, and the most important is this Botvinnik rule, that knights and games are the same as pawn and games in valuation, not in all of occasions, obviously, because knight has these tricky jumps always that disturbs us in blitz games and stuff, but in general it works like that. You play with advantage, it's easy to evaluate position and easier to build plan according to this previous valuation. Thank you, I hope you enjoyed it, and the next video, part 2, will cover another Botvinnik rule.